Hi everyone, welcome back to Wallace's, where today we are going to talk about spring prepping your landscape and perennial beds. So they've kind of been blanketed under snow or just cold weather all winter long. We've sort of ignored them, and now everything is starting to wake up and need some attention. So today we're going to cover cutting things back, fertilizing, mulching, staking, and supporting all of your plants as they start to grow. Stick with me and we are going to start talking about cutting things back and kind of doing that general cleanup to start with. A lot of our plants, especially perennials, we maybe have left up over the winter. We left our cone flowers up so the birds could come get the seeds, our sedum plants that have their old flower heads. All that stuff is ready to be cut back and removed from the garden. So I like to use a simple hand pruner when I do it. I use, when I'm going to be doing a lot of cutting, these Fiskars Power Gears. They have a handle that is a rolling handle, and so it's a lot less stress on my wrist and my fingers. I have fairly small hands, and so I also like the way this fits my hands. If you have a pruner that is not comfortable for you to hold when it's open, it's too far, you may want to consider trying out a new type of pruner, or one that's going to be less stress on your wrist. So when we don't have good sharp pruners or pruners that are comfortable to use, we end up doing a lot more tearing of plant tissue than actually making nice, sharp, clean cuts. So start with a good pruner. If it's a little rusty, go ahead, use some mineral oil, kind of use a nice cloth to get some of that rust off, and get so you have a nice working pruner. And then when we go out to our perennials, we're going to see that maybe we already have some nice green growth coming up from the ground. And so anything above that, kind of our old dead stems, those are ready to be removed. So you're just going to take your pruners and cut those off at the ground. And before you know it, the new green growth of that plant is going to cover up all the old dead material that's still there. So that's kind of the best way to start for me, is to go through and do that cleanup. One big thing that can kind of take the longest is ornamental grasses. We always encourage people to leave those up over the winter. They provide shelter for wildlife, they provide seeds for the birds, and they also provide really pretty movement, and kind of the way they hold the snow is really pretty over the winter. As we move into spring, they don't look that great. So you want to go through and make sure you're cutting those back before the new growth starts on your grasses. Most ornamental grasses are warm season grasses, so you won't see anything coming up quite yet in this springtime. They won't start growing until it's about 80 degrees, so you have some time before the new growth starts. That makes it much easier to cut back all the old dead growth. If it's a really big grass, one thing I recommend is taking some garden twine and tying up all of that grass so that when you do cut it, you can simply pick up that bundle of grass and move it to your landscape waste or compost pile without having to rake and gather up all those grass clippings that you've just cut down. So those are kind of my two biggest garden prep secrets, is use good pruners and make sure if you have something that's really big and bushy that you tie it up with twine before you go ahead and cut it out of the ground. Once we've done all of our cutting and cleanup, it's time to start thinking about fertilizer. If you have established plants, established shrubs and perennials, I like to re-up with some Espoma Flower Tone. This is great for perennials if you have a lot of blooming things. If you have more evergreens or flowering shrubs, you can use the Holly Tone. I like to use Flower Tone in the beds where I have a lot of perennials. This is a granular organic that is going to go in the soil, top dressed around kind of the root system of all of your perennial plants. And you can read the back of the bag to tell you how much product you need per square foot or per plant. So Flower Tone is great for your established perennials. If you have new plants, so stuff that you planted within the last year, maybe last summer, last fall, you added some new perennials to your landscape beds, added some new shrubs, we are going to go ahead and recommend the Root Stimulator. This is a liquid. If you don't want to use a liquid, you can use the Espoma Biotone plant starter as well. But this is going to encourage root growth and reduce transplant shock. So even though we planted them 6 or 9 months ago, those plants are still relatively young, and we are trying to get them to establish a really strong root system. So for anything that is new, newly planted, or newly divided and transplanted, Root Stimulator is the product that we're going to want to use. This is best applied. Read the label instructions for how much to use, mix it in a watering can, and pour it around the base of all of those new plants that you've just planted. Okay, so now that we have done our cleanup and we've applied our fertilizer to get our plants growing, we need to think about certain specific plants and issues that might arise with them. One of those is with our hostas, and especially in the spring, we will start to see slug damage. So as our little hosta leaves start to poke up out of the ground, we can also have slug damage, and they chew little holes in the leaves of our hostas and make them look not very pretty. So in spring, as they're coming up from the ground, when they get to be about 1 to 2 inches up above, but they're still tightly wound up leaves before they unfurl, we want to go ahead and put down our preventative slug bait. So slug bait is all natural. This is one from Sluggo. We also have Slug Magic. It's iron phosphate, so it's all natural. It's not going to harm pets, cats, dogs, any wildlife that is around there, but it is attractive to the slugs, and they actually will choose to eat this over eating your hostas. And then it is a stomach binder for them, and it binds up their stomach. So this is a great time of year to put this down all around your hostas. If you wait too long and all the leaves unfurl, in order to apply it around the base of your plant, you're going to have to kind of lift its dress up and sprinkle it underneath. So this just makes it a lot easier for you. Sluggo and Slug Magic both come with like a flip top lid, so you can actually use the jug as a shaker and shake it out over your hosta beds. Don't be afraid to put it down nice and thick all around your plants. It lasts as long as the slugs are there to eat it. When you see it start to disappear and there's not very much left, that means it's time to reapply. So it's not a certain amount of time. It's just as it gets consumed by the slugs, you'll need to keep track and apply more. The next thing to think about when we're thinking about specific perennials and plants that we have in our yards is to think back to last summer, fall, into what was falling over, what was something that you kind of battled with and were always trying to tie up. So I have that problem with my Annabelle hydrangeas. They are big and beautiful, and they've been there for years, but they get floppy in the summer. So this time of year, I will actually go through and I put in these supports. So these are what we call grow through grids. And so it's just a plastic kind of vinyl coated sturdy grid that comes with these legs, and there are different sizes. And I actually go through and I put these over all of my Annabelle hydrangea crowns that I have gone ahead and cut back already. And so when they start growing, I have this grid actually pushed way down deep into the ground so that it's right above where the plants are growing. And as the plant grows up, I kind of raise it up. So what that does is the plant stems grow right through here, and then they are supported, their weight is supported by the grid instead of flopping over onto my deck or onto my patio. So this is a great product. These grow through grids are awesome for ornamental grasses that get floppy. They are awesome for peonies. If you have peonies that are starting to come up, this is a great way, instead of a peony cage or peony ring, to put these grow through grids over the top of them. But you want to do it in the spring now before they get too big and growing, much in the same way that you put a tomato cage over a tomato plant when it's much too small to need it, and the plant grows into the support that it needs. So this is the time of year to think about staking and supports for some of your problem plants that get tall or get floppy over the summer, and what you can do to help support them as they grow. The last thing I want to talk about for landscape bed prep is Pren. So this is a product that's been around for a really long time, and it is one of my top easy gardening tips, kind of a work smarter, not harder product. And that is because I personally love to garden, hate to weed. And in our landscape beds, especially as we move into the warmer temperatures of spring, those weeds start popping up in our landscape beds. When we look at those sprays that will kill those weeds, there isn't one on the market that will tell the difference between my good flowers, my beautiful sedums, my cone flowers, my hosta, that will tell the difference between those and the weeds that I don't want in my landscape beds. And because I don't want to spend the whole summer on my hands and knees pulling weeds, I put down Pren in my landscape beds. So Pren is a granular product that we put down in landscape beds, and what it does is prevent seed germination. So there's weed seeds that are in the bed that are just lying in wait, waiting for the temperatures to warm up, waiting for enough moisture, and then those weed seeds will start to pop up. So before that happens, I like to put down Pren. It's another granular product that you shake onto the landscape bed, and then you water it in. Once it's been watered in with a nice good spring rain or with your hose, it forms a chemical barrier that keeps any of those weed seeds from germinating into the landscape. So this one in particular, the green lid Pren, also has a fertilizer in it. So this is a great way to give your shrubs and perennials a little bit of fertilizer, as well as prevent those weeds from growing up around them. If you've already done a fertilizer like the flower tone or the root stimulator, this is going to be okay to put on top of that. It's not going to be too much. They're all slow release and non-burning, so it won't matter if you do both kinds at one time. So Pren is one thing that you want to think ahead, put down, and it will save you a lot of time later in the season. The one thing to think about is if you like to put down anything and grow it from seed in your garden beds. So if you seed a whole bunch of zinnia mixes into your flower garden, those zinnia seeds will be prevented from germinating by Pren as well. So make sure that you get everything planted and growing the way you want it, and then go ahead and put down your Pren. So if you have bulbs in the garden like daffodils, crocus, tulips, the Pren will not affect them. They will still come up and grow in your garden for you. It's just anything that's going to germinate from seeds is what's going to be stopped by the Pren. The last thing to know with Pren is that if you go ahead and put it down, water it in, get it working, and then you go ahead and dig in that soil. You decide you want to move one of your daylilies or you want to plant something new. By digging in the soil, you break that barrier. So once you're done digging and disturbing the soil, go ahead, reapply your Pren, water it in, and reinstate that barrier. So it's going to keep those weed seeds from germinating and keep you from having to spend the summer doing weed control when you'd rather be planting more flowers. Thank you for joining me today as we talked about spring landscape bed preparation. Come see us at Wallace's with your questions, and find me at Wallace's Garden Center in Bettendorf.